So we're recording, and so your Morro Bay was was well received when I hit it. But I got a charge out of Dan Fogelberg. that, so that was straight out of college. I got to tell you, my roommate loved Dan Fogelberg. So, folks, if you haven't seen the Morro Bay clip, just pour a cup of kombucha or wine and enjoy Morro Bay from the courtesy of Rob and Denise Hitchcock. Anyway, Rob, here we are, huh?
Yeah, here we are. We're looking
and
at
7.
Well, we actually gotten through 3 modules, and I got to say, the responses I've had from the students, the teachers taking this, I'm really impressed. There's some of them really taking it seriously and really diving into not just the book, but the ideals that are going with it too. And that's really what we want. How do we tie this thing into the classroom for them, and how well can we share this, the tenets of Glasser with everyone who's going around here too. So this time we get to step into module 4, and this is going to be after a little break. We've kind of gone halfway through our course at this point, so probably won't be seeing this until sometime in November even at this point, coming up with it. So we're going to take a little break and let people kind of catch up a little bit, because it's been a fast moving fall, with everything from COVID to smoke to whatever else, and it's kind of been kind of crazy. So we'll take a little break, build a few other pieces here, and this will be kind of the first return to the second half of the course, if you will, as we go through it. And chapters we're looking at here in module 4 are chapters 6, which have to do with how we behave, quality work feels good, and then chapter 7, which is all about quality schoolwork. So now we're getting to some.
I have to say, chapter 6, he gets into his psychologist big time. I mean, he's making me overthink why I walk. I mean, it's like
yes. This is, he said, we've done a lot of the why up to this point, and now this is the how we behave. So we talk a lot in the district about really sharing the why we do things and the whole bit. Well, this is the how piece of it from the Glasser standpoint, and it's pretty, to me, it's pretty interesting stuff, because this is where you really begin to see that you can't separate the behaviors you choose are a function of your actions, your physiology, your thinking, your feeling. All these things are all part of it. Some things more than other parts of it. He has a ugly diagram that he shared with us, Glasser did when we had him here with us, which someday I'll share with you guys. But it was a car, and how to steer the car. Oh God, and the filters, and it's crazy. But
steering wheel, the wheel turning. Yeah, right. Yep.
And the feeling, the thinking, the action, the how do what's going on there. But it's kind of cool stuff. It's just kind of really, we're not going to have to go there yet. So this is where he starts talking about this part of it, though, is how we behave thing. And to me, it resonated when he starts talking about how you have students in your class that aren't necessarily buying into stuff. They may really feel like they're not a part of what's happening there. They're not belonging in there. And so they show apathy. They don't really care and want to be there, and they become the problems that you're working with. And, he really talks a lot about how these behaviors are chosen because they're powerless. And so, how can you get in to their quality world is the key here. Why do they do this? Well, they're trying to do the best they can in a world, the real world, that they don't understand and they perceive differently. And how can we become a picture in their quality world as teachers, as administrators, as the people that we're working with on our campuses?
Yeah, this is where I feel like it speaks to a high school district, because we're at that point we're doing gradual release from the kind of the preteens to adulthood. And so when kids start to realize that I've been doing school this way, and whether I've been good at it or not, it's like I kind of know how to do it, right? It's more stimulus response maybe, not to take anything away from the way the younger grades are going, but I think what we can do with the maturation of the kid is to start giving them some power. And so, it's like when you give choice, you give power, and it's not like you're deeding at all, but it's deeding a little power to empower that kid, right? So I think at the high school grades where they're at, they are obviously from freshman to senior year, there's a huge maturation that happens. But if we begin to deed that power, we get a lot out of them. And I think the quality world starts to, maybe be more inclusive of school because they feel like they got some buy-in.
Well, and as an example, I always think of Wade Wolf as an activities director, and then also looking at him as what he does with his CTTV, and that can be true on any of our campuses. We're looking at these guys that are making these wonderful productions, but I mentioned Wade because I've watched him over the years, and it is really empowering these students to lead, to choose, to be really the key to the success of these programs, and they've done a great job. I think Wade started with Thunderpaw way back in the 90s.
That's right. Yeah.
That's why I mentioned him first in there, because you got, great stuff happening at all of our campuses in terms of this now, which is really cool. But it really has to come with this idea of the empowerment of the students, freedom to be able to work, and them, satisfying their needs doing that. And we do a lot of places we do this really well.
You probably talk about Wade, and that kind of pivots to the next chapter. Not to push us along too fast, but I just feel like, when you talk about quality schoolwork, that is sort of an example of really student invested quality schoolwork. And so, anytime you can inject that type of work into a class, you're going to have more student agency displayed, where students have choice. They make, they feel like they own it a little bit more. And I think we're trying to address that even in grading practices, where it's not like I just know how to do school to get the right grade because it's just a transactional thing. It's more of how can our classrooms be more transformational? And so I feel like, when it gets to that next quality schoolwork aspect, that really challenges us to think about the types of assignments we give.
Oh, that is it's going to be our next module that we're going to talk about is strictly Chapter 8, which is grading, and we will have a little bit more discussion about that. And Joe Feldman, I'm going to share some articles of his work in there too, because that's kind of the key to what we're doing here. And it's all driven by equity too, so that we get more students involved from different. In our area, of course, it has to do a lot with socioeconomically disadvantaged students, but other of our groups that don't show as well or aren't as bought into our academic world as others. And this is where, again, our CTE programs, you're working a lot with those guys doing things. And I look everything from, welding on our campuses to looking at how we're working in these engineering classes and making things happen, and computer classes, and really are trying to do a better job of engaging all students and tying in there. I think
that's where the evidence of quality is so clear. I get you. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it matters where a kid comes from, what, household. They all know what quality looks like and feels like. And when they can take ownership of it, it's pretty powerful. So give us a few more tidbits on this Chapter 7 on quality schoolwork, because I think that's where it's going to start to sink in a little bit more.
Yeah, we start looking at that. One thing that stands out to me, well, actually both these chapters, the thing that Glasser says is really the only person that any of us can consistently control is ourselves. And so, that's the behavior piece and how we work through that. And to get students to reflect on that, to start looking at how they're behaving and what they're behaving, it also then gets into what they're producing. And that's where you start to look at self-evaluation, being able to look at their work critically and improve on it. And again, back to these other places, that's what's going on. That's where you turn the corners, where kids start to actually evaluate in their critical thinking, are able to make things better by talking about them, building on them at that point. And we do that in our high level classes. We see a lot of that stuff happening, AP classes, IB courses, that's really going to be an area there too. And obviously CTE courses, we're doing that too at this point. So I see these big things happening. And again, to get to that point where kids are at that point where they can judge, where they can study and improve what they're actually doing, they got to know what they're looking for too. Glasser has the example of when you ask a student, are you capable of getting a good education? And they all, oh yeah, I can do that. Well, what is good? How do you approach good education? Well, it's hard work. You have to really work at it. Oh yeah, is it hard work? Yes, it's really hard work. And then he'll ask,
But do you do hard work when you're at school?
Yeah, no, not really. Sometimes.
Yeah.
And again, it's back to sports. It's activities, drama. It's music. It's other areas that they're there on a volunteer basis, more or less. In their minds, so they got freedom. That's a freedom thing. There are constraints, and they are willing to cave to those constraints for those disciplines and areas because they're bought into it. So again, that buy-in, that being part of their quality world and having them buy into us is real important in this whole thing.
Yep.
Again, he also makes the point that if you're a manager of workers out there, you have the ability in most cases to discharge your workers if they're non-productive. Not the case in the classroom. So it's a little different world that we deal with in education. So
it's a little different. And I think, the ejection from the room, it's there are instances where kids need to remove themselves, but I think the more important thing is how do you respond then when that kid does come back into your world, right? Back into your classroom. And so this gets into the discipline part. And I know that'll be probably part of a future discussion here, but I know that when I was thinking about quality schools, a lot of it was how to address sort of discipline. But I think the quality school work is core because that's when that quality world gets built and nurtured, and they do more hard work for you and more quality work for you. So it's all connected. There's an absolute connection between that behavior, the ownership of the behavior, the self-evaluation, and having some buy-in, as you said.
He does have a cautionary note in here too about trying to achieve quality with your students and demanding more of them. He says, go at it slowly at first. Build that relationship. Build a foundation. Use your relationship to build a foundation of trust there first, and build in quality in the short term. If you want them to understand quality in the long term, the rewards of that in the long term, build up slowly to that. Too many will jump right in and say, well, this is a long-term project we're going to work on, and you're going to have this great thing done at the end. And the road's just too long to get there for students who don't really know you and haven't really built that relationship. If you've got that there, it makes a difference. He makes the comment in here in talking about experience. What do you say here? Well, it's about teachers who, first of all, become great teachers and quality teachers, and the students see that, and then they buy into you, and then you can push them a little bit harder at that point too, and that's, again, having that quality world right there is kind of, you have to have a good track record with the kids is what it comes down to.
You have to have a good track record. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, these are good. They're all, I think there's a lot of opportunity to self-evaluate when you read these chapters.
Well, that's probably a good place for us to let these people move on to others.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love talking to you, and we can keep this thing going.
It's all good. And I'll see you next time, huh?
Sounds good.
Take care. Let's get rid of this smoke so we can get some hiking in.
Yes. Yes.